Hi, my name is Samara Stone, and I have been invited here today on behalf of the Swedish Disability Organization and personal assistance provider STIL, the founders of independent living in Sweden, to talk about what personal assistance is, how it came to be, some of their policies behind it all, and some of the difficulties that we are facing today. This brief talk is, as you can see, pre-recorded, but I will be participating online and will hopefully then be able to answer some of the questions and or comments that you might have. So let's dive into the topic of personal assistance then, shall we? In order to understand how personal assistance actually works here in Sweden, I first need to tell you some of the history behind it all. The legislation concerning the rights to personal assistance in Sweden actually comes from the independent living movement, which goes all the way back to the 60s in the United States in California. One of the pioneers behind the Swedish legislation is Adolf Latzka, whom you might have heard of. He moved to Berkeley, California in the 70s and got the first taste on how life could be with personal assistance. When he started his PhD here in Stockholm, there was no such thing now. Instead, he had to make do with some sort of home care service, meaning mobile institutions where different people would come into his home, providing help with certain tasks on specific times. As you can see, this is nothing like the personal service provided by personal assistants. Knowing by experiencing in Berkeley what real personal assistance could mean, Adolf then invited some of his friends, among them Judy Heumann and Ed Roberts from the US, to a conference here in Stockholm in 1983, where the disability community was invited to learn more about the independent living philosophy, which is a theory that demands the right to personal assistance among else. On that conference, a few people, all of them disabled and all of them in need of personal assistance, came together and started the so-called STIL project. Through this project, about 20 people were offered the same amount of money as they would otherwise have been paid for the home care service, but the money was paid into STIL instead. This enabled them to hire their own personal assistants instead of being assessed by the staff provided by the home care service. So, to the same cost, people were now able to live freely with personal assistance provided while they were on their own terms by people whom they have chosen for themselves. Of course, this project turned out to be a major success. It's important to understand what makes personal assistance so special compared to other types of disability support service. To fully understand this, we need to understand the very basis of personal assistance and the foundation on which it leans. Of course, this is the independent living philosophy, a theory stating everyone's right to live a self-determined life within the society, with services offered to provide the ability to do exactly that. In contrast, personal assistance is not considered personal if the user of the service is not able to choose who, when, what, where, and how the service is provided. But still, we don't really talk about assistant users. Instead, we use the term supervisors, since that is exactly what this is all about. We supervise our own personal assistants, making our team work for us on the basis of our needs and wants and likes. In 1992, almost 10 years after the STEEL project was first launched, the Act concerning support and service for persons with certain functional impairments was legislated in Sweden. This was all thanks to the members in STEEL, who had worked together with the Liberal Party here in Sweden to ensure everyone's right to a self-determined life outside of institutions, no matter if the institutions were located in big, specific buildings, as in the 60s and 50s, or at individual homes with staff not chosen by you, but by others, such as in the 70s and 80s. In 1993, the Act turned into action. So suddenly people with disabilities started thriving. We started to work. We were able to educate ourselves, start families, keep social relations, travel, partake in cultural activities. Just overnight, we had turned into fully participant citizens. I myself am born in 1993. This means that I've had the fortune to grow up with personal assistance, making it possible for me to live at home with my parents and my sister. Also making it possible for me to attend a regular school, making friends with all kinds of people, experience all kinds of different things that life has to offer. By the means of personal assistance service, I have been able to travel to the US, in Europe, to Japan, among other things. I have been able to, at the university degree, I have been able to work, to move into my own apartment, and to get a hat. By the means of personal assistance, I'm able to live the life that I choose for myself. Today, people are although not that lucky here in Sweden. Here, the right to personal assistance is in question on a regular basis. People with disabilities are being accused of being frauds, faking their needs, and in search of those few who are actually committing crimes, we are getting assessed and reassessed in humiliating ways that violate our integrity as human citizens. Even though personal assistance is a law based on human rights, there are several instances where people are not offered the amount of service that they actually need. Just a few years ago, an addition was made stating that personal assistance should only be granted if a task requires hand-on in. This means that personal assistance should only be granted for those few minutes when your assistant assists you by physical touch. This makes it hard, if not impossible, for many to earn the service. And it leads to bizarre situations, since such things as going to the toilet or eating is not considered as a full activity in itself, but rather as many instances of minor tasks counted per second. Furthermore, not everything is considered being assistance worthy. Tasks such as putting on makeup or brushing your hair is not approved as an eligible activity when applying for personal assistance service. This means that you cannot do these things unless you have first been granted at least a minimum of 20 hours per week for the so-called basic needs, that is, touch, hands in. This is just one of the ways in which personal assistance is being questioned here in Sweden today. We can also see how we are getting closer and closer to a reinstitutionalization, where life that we thought belonged to history, the kind of life that I myself has never experienced, is now an actual future threat. Of course, this is one of the reasons why the work that we do at STIL is so important. We are advocating not only for basic human rights, as stated by the UN Disability Rights Convention, Article 19, a convention which Sweden ratified as early as 2009, but also we are working for improvements of the law, improvements that will strengthen our right to personal assistance. Among other things, we would like to see a future where the government takes full responsibility for the personal assistance service. This will make it possible for everyone all over Sweden to access the service on equal terms, instead of how it is today, where there is a shared responsibility between the government and the municipalities, which makes the service differ based on where in Sweden you live. If you remember anything from my talk here today, I would like you to remember this. Personal assistance is a fundamental, basic human right. It is never, and it shall never be, the cherry on top. Therefore, if a society wants to call itself truly equal, the democratic right to self-determination must be ensured. And personal assistance is only ever defined as such if it lives up to certain qualities. It must be in terms of direct payment, so that the people who are utilizing the service, such as myself, are able to choose whom, when, where, what, and how the service is provided. It is not until then that this is settled that we as persons with disabilities are fully involved and fully included in the society. Thank you for listening to my talk.